Okay. Today we're going to start on the bottom of Kuf Lamed Zion, page 137. 137b. It's 4 lines from the bottom. I'm Rabbi Yudah Shmuel. Thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. Most of our learning we should have Beis Hamikdash immediately. Learning Lili Nishma, Savagolda Basbar Binyamin, and Sanas Abba Mitzin, and also for Shlema for Avin David Ben Sarah and Kedal Gethel Yasmin Keditz Pera. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna leave early today, so let's see how far we can get. I'm Rabbi Yudah Shmuel. Rabbi Yudah says in the name of his teacher Shmuel, says a case from the Chasav La'acher. Someone we're talking about on his deathbed. He's does it have to be on his deathbed? Does it say over there if it's specifically his deathbed or if it's something else? You check. What is it? It says his deathbed. Okay. So yeah, Shemira. And he said the other person, the recipient, says, Vamar Hala Yefshibem. He says, I don't want it. Now it's not explaining to us why he doesn't want it, but it could be like the Gemara later on, is that someone was giving to his friend avadim, slaves. He says, I can't feed them. You know, sometimes it's something that he doesn't want. He's not interested in.
The Riv says and the Rambam, the Rashbam, disagrees, says that even to a healthy person.
So Hillel is telling me that there's a machlekes here. If it's a shchimira, it's a machlekes the Rif and the Rambam. Okay, the halacha is what Shmuel says. Rabbi Yehuda saying over is kana, that it doesn't matter. The recipient acquires it. Yeah, he says I don't want it. He says tough luck. Okay, even if he's screaming. Rabbi Yechanan says like kana. Rabbi Yechanan says he doesn't acquire. Well, Amar Rabba Bar Mamal, Rabba Bar Mamal explains for Pligi that there's no machlekes. Kan. Where do we say? Where does Rabbi Yechanan say that he doesn't acquire it? That's B'tzavach Mi'ikara. That's because he was screaming right away. He says, "I don't want it. I don't want it." Kan. Where does Shmuel say that he acquires it? That's B'sheisik Mi'ikara B'tzavach. That originally he was quiet. That means he was accepting it, and later on he started to shout that I don't want it. So if he's screaming from the beginning, I don't want it. Now, where Rabbi Yechanan says that he doesn't acquire it, now there's a machlekes in the Rishonim. The Rashbam holds that it doesn't go back to the benefactor. It becomes hefker. The person doesn't acquire it because he doesn't want it, and the person that was giving it, it's out of his possession. It becomes ownerless. Whoever wants can take it. That's the opinion of Rish Lakish in another Gemara. Yeah.
Because the kids, the second they're born, they get an inheritance.
Right. No, inheritance becomes theirs automatically. This is not inheritance. It's a case of Nachas Lacher. Right? This is a gift. Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, Zikalay al Yidei Acher v'Shasakal b'Seif Tzavach. This is very interesting. Let's say in the room where this person is giving out his gift, maybe it's a Shchiv Mira, but he's giving it to another person, third party. And he's telling him, I want you to acquire this on behalf of, he's giving it to Shimon. He says, I want you to acquire this on behalf of Reuven. Make a kinyan on it for Reuven. So Reuven is there, but he's not saying anything. Then when they hand him over the document, he says, I don't want this. So the halacha is Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. He says, Banul lemachlekes Rab Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan. You're entering into a machlekes over here. Does he acquire it or not? In other words, here he was quiet, not when he was receiving it. He was quiet when someone else was receiving it. And the when a person's quiet, it's like this vague, it's in this ambiguous quiet that we don't know. It doesn't mean that he's accepting it. It doesn't mean that he's rejecting it. So now, if he screams later, sometimes it could tell us that the reason why it was quiet before, the meaning of that silence was that he was rejected. So what happens now is that if there was someone else there, they were giving it to Shimon to acquire it on behalf of Reuven. So if they were giving it to Shimon and Reuven was quiet, right? Shimon was supposed to acquire it on behalf of Reuven, but Reuven was quiet during that time. So we're going to see now. This is a machlekes. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Someone writes his possessions over to someone else, and there were slaves there. Now, that could be a huge responsibility. The slaves, what are you going to do with them? He gives them 2 elephants. You have to. Now, the truth is that you don't really have to. There's an opinion that holds that the slaves have to find their own food. That you don't have to actually feed the slaves. You can say, work for me and find your own foods, but nevertheless, that's not nice. So he doesn't want them. All right. So he says, I don't want them. I can't handle them. Of this tiny house, right? How many maids do I need? After 20 minutes, they clean the whole place. So what else do I need? So Imhaya Rabban Sheni Kayen. The rule is, this is the expression to mean that he acquires them. If the second master was a Kayen, it says Hariya Elu Oichlam B'Truma. It's too late. They're already yours, and they can already start eating truma. Okay, that's the opinion of the Chachamim. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, this is the father of Rebbe. It says anywhere where there's the statement of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel in the Mishnah, the halacha is like him, except for 3 places, right? But this is a brisa, so you lose that rule over here, according to the Rashbam.
Question.
Yeah.
This is always where he says he doesn't want
a gift,
secondary gift. But what if he says I don't want the property because I can't afford the taxes?
Right. That's what he's saying.
No, you're splitting. He's giving him a property plus slaves and slaves.
No. He's not. We're not splitting. He's saying I don't want. Oh, you're saying over here that he's splitting it up. I didn't learn it like that. It just says that amongst this was that he says I don't want it.
I don't want that. So I'm guessing what he doesn't want.
Same thing, yeah. So if the person says I can't handle them, I don't want them, no, that means the inheritors already acquired it. He's arguing on that opinion before that says that it goes hefker. It was an opinion before that we mentioned in another Gemara that says that if the benefactor, he already it's out of his possession. The recipient doesn't want it. So where does it go? It goes to hefker, becomes ownerless. This is arguing. He says it goes back to the benefactor, and his inheritors were thinking that he's passing away, or if not, it just stays by him. It says he acquires it. In other words, the person doesn't have to accept the gift, and if the second person is a kayan, it doesn't help. They can't eat truma because he didn't acquire them. Yeah. On the top of the page, the Rashbam says that the reason why someone maybe doesn't want a gift is because it's someone that doesn't take gifts lives longer. Yeah, the less gifts you take, the longer you live. It's but then I think there was a Gemara, Reb Zera and someone else. They would take gifts. They felt that when they took a gift, they were giving the other person a gift. The fact that he was giving to them, that was like a gift for them.
Was that from
Natia, I think. There were a few sages in the Gemara somewhere where they said one of them took the gift, some didn't take the gift. They said, how could you take the gift? They said, no, we're doing them a gift by taking it.
Well, I'm asking from the Chumash.
Mikol Chasadim, yeah.
Used up all
His merits, all his.
Making it happen. Buy them. They accept her. That word.
Uh-huh. It's interesting in the parsha where Avram doesn't want to take the scent from the king of Sodom, but he took all the gifts from Pare. He tells the king of Sodom, Hashem's going to make me rich, not you. And meanwhile, Pare gave him all the gifts.
Was it after?
It was before. But Hashem told him before that as well.
It wasn't really pirates. Sorry.
It was because of Sarah, but it was Pare. Anyway, the
Maybe it
Mefarshim
was a
say,
future thing to show them in the future when we would read things.
yeah, that's true. That's true. It does show that. But the question is, why was he taking it? It's not enough. The Mefarshim say that because that was given as an act of respect to Avram, that was part of the blessing, that you're going to get so much respect. That was all part of it. Over here, it wasn't a act of respect that you're going to take something. This is more like a business transaction. You bought this, you'll take this, I'll take that. This is, I'm not doing business with you. I'm going to get rich from Hashem. Okay, so okay, so we entered into a machlekes. However, we're not done yet. But we asked about this machlekes. We have a Tanakama, we have a first opinion that says that the second person acquires it, even though he doesn't want it. And in Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, it says he doesn't acquire it. Tanakama, we asked about this. Why does he acquire it? He's screaming he doesn't want it. Amar Rava, Vitema Rabbi Yochanan. Rava says this, and some say it was Rabbi Yochanan. That's very odd. That we're not sure if it's Rava or Rabbi Yochanan. It's usually like Amar Rava, Amar of Papa, Amar Rav, Rava Vitema Rav Papa or something. Or Amar of Papa Vitema Rava, because they were students. So we weren't sure who said it. Okay, what's happening here is B'tzavach mi kari. B'tzavach mi kari. No, we have to spell this out. B'tzavach mi kari. If the case is where he was screaming the whole time, I don't want to accept this gift, the kuli amalei pligid lekani, then everyone says he doesn't acquire. Shasakal b'tzayv tzavach. If he was quiet and afterwards he started to scream the kuli amalei pligid lekani, everyone agrees that he does acquire it. It's too late. He was quiet at the beginning. Now you don't want it. Now figure out how to get rid of it.
Before we've seen that people don't protest, they not upset the other person, but they might protest.
Yeah.
Could the same thing happen here?
Exactly. Keep ligi. When is the machlekes? That there was a transaction that was taking place for him to acquire it, and it was working with someone else. And because it didn't enter into his hand yet, so he didn't say anything. He said, look, you do whatever you want, and without me, I'm not involved. And then when this comes to him, he says, no way, I don't want it. In other words, he wasn't getting involved because it didn't reach his hand. But now that he's screaming, now it's telling me that the reason why he was quiet before, and was that ambiguous silence, was is it because he wasn't expecting to take it, or is it because he wanted to take it and now he's changing his mind? The Tanakama Savar Midashasa Kanino. Tanakama says that now he's changing his mind. Before he was quiet, he saw what was going on. There was the transaction that was taking place that he was going to acquire them. By the Katsavach, and then now he's screaming. Mahadu the Kahadabe. Now he's retracting. Now it's too late. You're gonna have to figure out what to do with the slaves. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Savar Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, he holds that when he's screaming now, that's proving about his silence before. This that he was silent before. His the Savar, he thought that if it didn't come into my hand, why am I screaming? Right? It's not a problem till it's a problem. Okay. So we have this machlekes where this transaction's taking place. Someone else, the Rashbam actually tells us the halacha is like the Chachamim over here. Let's say that he acquires it, not like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. It's interesting. He says when the statement of the Gemara halacha Reb Shimon ben Gamliel b'mishnah seinu is only if it's the actual Mishnah. But when the Gemara says Mishnas Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Kalpanaki, that's even in a brisa. So he's playing with the word Mishnah. That sometimes it means a Mishnah, sometimes it means a brisa. It depends. Mishnah Seinu means a Mishnah. Mishnas means a brisa. Okay.
Well, that makes sense. Prices, our ambitions, they
Yeah.
just weren't codified by us, so we
Right.
give them another one. So
Right.
Mishnah something else. Wouldn't make
Right.
sense.
And Rabbana was taught in the Brisa. Person on his deathbed that says, give 200 coins to so-and-so, to Reuven. Give 300 to Shimon. And 400 to Levi. We don't say that Reuven was first, his name was first in the document, so he gets the first, and let's see what's left. And we don't say that. We say that they all getting equally. It's just impossible to say all the words at the same time. So you had to itemize, right?
When a Shulchan says all this, is that considered a gift or is this?
It's a gift. Yeah, well, that's very interesting. It's a gift, but it's treated as a inheritance in certain aspects. Yeah, so that's a little bit of a confusing discussion. So,
If he was healthy, it'd be.
yes,
Definitely.
yeah. He didn't say after. He did not say after. We don't say that the one with the name that came first in the document acquires first. Therefore, if a document of a promissory note comes against the benefactor, right? The one who gave the gift. So then we don't go to the last person. So you received last. So this was the property that was last in his possession, and therefore we collect from that one first. Because when they got their properties, your property was still there and still had the lien on it. We don't say that. We say that he takes from each of them equally. So if it was
well, they probably have to give back in the same proportion they received.
yeah, in the proportion. So this one, if it was what would it be, 7? So if they would take 2 coins from the guy that got 200, would take 3 coins. No, that's 3 coins from the guy that got 300, and 4 coins. That's not 7, that's 9. And it was 9. He owed him 9, so he would take in 4 coins from the guy that got 4, right? Yeah.
But that's not what it says. It says he starts from the end and it doesn't fulfill.
That's a different case.
Oh,
That's the next case. However, Aval Amar, but if he says, give 200 to this person, and after that, what's left, remaining, give to someone else, give to Shimon. And after that, what's remaining, give to someone else. Say that the names here are significant, and the first person, Reuven, received it first. You say use the word afterwards. Afterwards makes a big difference in the document. Lefikach, and therefore Yatzalav Starchav gave him an achron. Start from the end, collecting. Ain't like there's not enough over there. Then give him Mishalafanov, because the way the lien works is that all the property that remains with him longer is the one that's collected first. So Misha gave him ain't like gave him Mishal if Neifanov, you go back to before that. You take from the earlier purchasers. There's a lien on that. Taner Rabbana was taught by Shchim Mirashamar, a person on his deathbed that said, if a Shchimira says, give 200 zuz to so-and-so, my son, to Reuven, my son, the firstborn, as is appropriate for him. Now, when he uses the word as is appropriate for him, in our language, that means that he's giving him his double portion. That's what a firstborn deserves. However, in the Gemara's language, when he says karoyalai, as appropriate for him, it's not being used in that context. It's using because he's such a good son, he treated me so well. So karoyalai, as is appropriate for him, giving it to him as an extra gift, not because he's the firstborn. In other words, this word karoyalai, when we read it in the Gemara, it's actually different. When we're reading it, we would understand it differently than the way in the Gemara times. It's karoyalai in the Gemara means that it's not because he's a firstborn. it's because he's just a great guy.
Would he give him more than the double portion?
And now, because of that, then Naitlan, he takes that 200 coins, and he also gets his double portion. Because he said Karayalai, which means because he's a great guy. If he doesn't say that, if he says as his firstborn portion, so then then he has the upper hand, which means Ratza Naitlan, if he wants, he could take these 200 coins as his firstborn portion. Ratza Naitl Bechirasi, or if he wants, he can take his firstborn portion, which maybe will be divided later, and he'll get it differently. You see, the reason for that is because the Rabbi Yochanan ben Breika that claims that a father can say which son is going to get more, that's all not including the firstborn. The firstborn, he doesn't have any rights over. He can't say them. If a person on his deathbed says, give 200 coins to my wife, as is appropriate for her. So once again, Karayla doesn't mean her ksuba. It means because she was a wonderful wife. And she takes those 200 coins plus she's going to get her ksuba. Imamar biksubasa, but if he says as the ksuba, then yadal yaina, then if he wants, if she wants, she can say Ratzon Neitlasan, she can say, okay, that will be my ksuba. Or if she wants Ratzon Neitlas ksubasa, she can take what's actually the ksuba, which was maybe some other way it was divided. Okay. Shchimira Shama, Shchimira that says, Tinu Masayim Zuz Lepleni Bal Chayvi, Karayalai. Give 200 zuz to so-and-so who lent me money, as is appropriate for him. So Naitlan b'Naitlas Chayvi. That person gets to take this money, plus he gets to take the, apparently it's not interest. Naitlan v'Naitlas Chayvi. V'imamar b'Chayva, but if he says as his debt, because of the debt, so then Naitlan b'Chayva, he takes him as the payment. He doesn't have any say over what he's getting paid in. Yeah, this must be a different. This must be not because of the loan. This is because they were old friends for a long time, and he wanted to give them this gift, right?
So when someone says as appropriate for him, that just means that he's just giving.
Yeah, because he's a great guy. Yeah.
In the place that had the custom to feed the workers, when the son of the king said, "Oh, we're going to feed you additionally,"
It's too much.
a big deal. Yeah,
Right.
you have to retract.
Exactly.
Is this one of the ways to escape the issue of rebus?
No, I mean
I mean, I want to borrow $100 from you, and it's such a great thing that you're giving me money. I really appreciate it. I just want to slip you some money for that.
no, that would be interest.
Mhm.
Here, he's not giving it to him because of the debt. He's giving it. There's nothing to do with the debt. They were probably old friends, and he says, "I know you always wanted my old baseball card collection, so here's for you."
Wow.
Comic books.
Also, this guy's with the inheritance.
Right.
There's an inheritance.
Uh-huh. Well, it's not really an inheritance. It's a shchimira, giving gifts. It was treated before as an inheritance because we're treating it because when someone gives a gift, and then there's a debt, and the person's coming to collect. So I don't know why the Rashbam says that if there's a debt and someone's coming to collect from inheritors, so even though it was given as a gift beforehand, as from the Shchivmira as a gift, but it's treated as an inheritance, and the person collects from it.
This is like conditional because if he recovers, he gets everything back. If he gives everything away,
Yeah, that's true. You would get everything back. If he recovers, he's gonna recover. So the Gemara says, if he says for the debt, then the person takes the 200 coins as part of the debt. The Gemara asks the obvious question. Maybe when he says karai, as is appropriate, maybe he means that was the debt. Right? I was trying to avoid this by telling you at the beginning that karai in the Gemara means something else. I was avoiding this question. The Gemara is going to explain that it's going to follow the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. See in a moment. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Li, Huna told me. That's the way Rav Nachman talks about Rav Huna. Hamani Rabbi Akiva, this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that we had earlier in the Masechta, the Dayak Lish in the Yisera, that he says whenever you use an extra expression, it's coming to include something that you didn't, that wouldn't have been there without it. It says, the Tanana was taught in the Mishnah, if a person sells a house and he sells the house, he doesn't sell together with the house, the well and the cistern and all of that. That's not part of it. That's a totally different function. So it says, what is
expounded?
Explained.
So that's just superfluous.
To explain with
Yeah.
commentary.
So he doesn't sell the pit and he doesn't sell the dus. The dus is a cistern. Even though he said, I'm selling you the depth and the height of the house. And what happens now is that there's a discussion. What about the path? Because he didn't sell the bar and the dus, he didn't sell the well and the cistern. So there's a new owner to the house. How does the previous owner who owns the well get to his house? So it depends. If he's meicher ba'ayin yafa, if he sells generously, then he sold himself out of his path. Now he needs to buy a path to get into it. So the Rabbi Akiva's opinion is Rabbi Akiva holds the original owner now has to buy his way back in to be able to get to his well. We learned this before, 7 years ago. And the Chacham say recently. The Chachamim say you don't have to buy a path because the Chachamim say that a person sells stingy. He didn't sell the house and the path, right? He kept the path for himself. Rabbi Akiva would admit that if the person says, besides, I'm selling you the house, but I'm not selling you the bar v'dus. Now, why do you have to add that in? I'm not selling you. He never sells the bar and dus. He says, I'm selling you my Lexus, but I'm not selling you my Mercedes. He says, of course, that wasn't part of the deal. Why do you have to say I'm not? No, so anyway, by the house, and what it means is that Rabbi Akiva would agree that he's retaining for himself the path. That's what it means.
That's Chachamim. Is that referring to the 70?
No, it's just whoever the sages are that are arguing with Rabbi Akiva.
Okay.
You just imagine there was a base medrash, and there's some people around the table and they're learning. Rabbi Akiva said an opinion. The other ones around the table said no. That's the Chachamim. Who are they? Usually, well, we had a machlekes before. When there's a machlekes Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim, if we go like Rabbi Akiva, the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva mechavei roi, v'lo mechavei rav. You pass it only when it's against one person, but not when against the majority. Chachamim means that there's more than one person. Anyone who is arguing, yeah.
What about the quality?
What do you mean?
Really big, rabbi, and then
We're talking about his friends amongst his contemporaries, I guess. I'm sorry. Rabbi Akiva would agree that in such a case, if he says chutz mi'ela, he doesn't have to buy a path. Alma, we see kivan leitzarach. Since he didn't need to say it, but he said it anyway. It's for Yemilsakas, he's coming to add something. So in our case also, when he says karoyalai, since he didn't need to say karoyalai as is appropriate for him, didn't need to say those words. He's coming to say that I'm giving something extra, and that's why the person gets it. Besides for the debt, he's getting it extra besides. A person on his deathbed that said money. Someone owes me money. He's on his deathbed, right? Ha'idim kaisvim afal pi she'ein makirim. The witnesses that are standing there by the deathbed can write down this. We don't have like written testimony, but we do have the zikarin dvarim. We do have, they can write, this is what was said. And the witnesses are allowed to write it down that this person said that so-and-so owes him money. And then, lefikach, and therefore, kashu gaiva, when the orphans go to collect, sarich lahavi raya, they have to bring a proof. Because they didn't have a proof. He just claimed someone owes money. There's no proof to that. Right? So they have to bring a proof. That's the words of Rameir. Chamim mamrim ein kaisvin, elam kein makirin. The Chum say you're not even allowed to write it down. Unless you know that this is actually the fact. Now, let me give you the explanation now before the Gemara spells it out. The explanation for this is that we're concerned that the halacha is that this record of this guy's claim is nothing, because you still need to bring a proof. But if you write it down and you take it to court and there's witnesses that signed on it, the court may think that it's something, if the court doesn't know the halacha. So the Chachamim are concerned that the court may not know the halacha. The court may not know the halacha, that writing it down doesn't mean anything, and therefore we tell the witnesses, don't write it down. Somehow the witnesses are going to know the halacha better than the court's going to know. And you follow? We have a concern of something that may happen because of this written document. Lefikach kashu gaiva. So therefore, when the collection is made, ein tzarich lavi raya, because such a statement is not good enough. So we would need an actual document to be good enough. So if there is an actual document and you collect, so then you don't have to bring a proof. Amar Rav Nachman, Amali Huna. Rav Nachman says that Huna told me, Tana, there's a brisa that has this exactly the opposite. Rav Meir in our Mishnah said, in our brisa said, that you are allowed to write it down, but you need to bring witnesses, you need to bring a proof that there was actually such a loan. Rav Meir ain't kaisvin. Now we're saying, Rameir says you're not allowed to write it down, exactly the opposite of our Mishnah, of our brisa. The Chum say you are allowed to write it down, exactly the opposite of the Chachamim. But for Meir, and even Reb Meir, when he said that not to write it down, that was because we're concerned that the Bezdin may make a mistake and think that this is a valid document and collect without any proof. Yeah. So the Rashbam says that the halacha is like the Chachamim, according to the way Reb Nachman has it. Means that we do write it down. Amar Rav Dim Minardai said, we do write it down. We're not concerned that the Bezdin is going to make a mistake and use this as a document to collect. You're allowed to write it. The Bezdin will figure it out. Don't worry about it. Ma'ishnami de Rava. What's the difference by Rava? Rava had another statement that's similar to this, and we were concerned about a Bezdin making a mistake. You know when this is practical? Sometimes there's a conservative conversion, and there's a marriage that took place after that. Let's say a woman converts conservative, and then there's a marriage. She marries someone, and then it's not an Orthodox marriage because the Orthodox rabbi wouldn't have done that wedding, and then they get divorced. So the Bezdin will give a get. Well, the Bezdin will write a get for them, and then they take the get and they say, see, I have a get. Obviously, I'm Jewish. And they'll try to get married again with the get.
What kind of
now, meanwhile, the conversion. No, well, even an Orthodox Bezdin would issue a get on that.
Oh, wow.
But they have a special way of writing that the next Bezdin should know that you can't really rely on this get as a testimony to the Jewishness. So actually, yeah, it's very interesting. The different ways of writing names if the conversion wasn't valid. Yeah.
So it's in. What do you mean? What's different about the name? Or is this a secret you don't want to tell us?
No. I forget. There was something about if they write Hagioris or something. Instead of writing Bas Avram Avinu. Or maybe they write Bas Avram Avinu instead of Bas Avram or some. There was some code in there that they used to let you know. They look at it and you say like, oh, something's not something suspicious, and then you have to do another another background check. So the Amar Rava says like this. He says, "Ein chaltzin elam kemakirin." If two people show up, a woman and a man, the woman says, "My husband passed away, and this is my husband's brother. We want to do chalitza." So it says over here, Rava says that we don't do a chalitza for them. We don't know who they are. And we can't do mian if a girl shows up and says, "I don't want to stay married to this man that my mother or brother married me off to, and I'm just rejecting him. I want to walk out." We don't do that because we don't know who this girl is. We don't know the man is. Lafikach, therefore, kaisvin get chalitza, get mian af pishem makirin. Lafikach, kaisvin. Therefore, if witnesses witnessed a chalitza, they're allowed to write it down that they saw a chalitza as a testimony, because the bezdin never would have done it unless they would have been makil. If you can get chalitza, get me enough b'shem makirin. So in it, the Gemara says the explanation is mishum d'chayshin lebezdin tayin, because we're afraid that the next bezdin, since witnesses were going to write it down, the next bezdin is going to assume that it's all taken care of. And they're going to allow them to get married. They're not going to do any background check when they see a letter from the bezdin that there was, or a letter from witnesses that this was a document that this already took place. So on one hand, we say that Rava says that we're concerned about bezdin tayin. We're concerned about the next bezdin, what the next bezdin. On the other hand, we have Rav Dimin Ardai telling me the halacha is that we're not concerned about the next bezdin. So the Gemara answers like Bezdin Basra Beidina Leidaiki. The first act over here of Rava was being done by one Bezdin. The next Bezdin is not going to go back and examine what they did. So therefore, the first Bezdin has to make sure that they do it 100%. Because no one's going to go check on what they did. However, Beidina Basar Eidim Daiki. However, a Bezdin will check what witnesses are testifying. So in other words, if it's witnesses here, we're not concerned that the next bezdin is going to make a mistake and accept everything at face value. But if it was a bezdin that did the first thing, then we do suspect that maybe what they said is going to be accepted at face value. That's why they have to be much more careful what's going to come out of it. There was a case of, it wasn't in our bezdin, but someone showed up. There was a man that didn't want to give a get, and they showed up in Besdin. It was ready to give the get, and the Besdin accepted it. Again, turned out it wasn't even the husband; it was a fake. The guy was like a brother or someone came up, and what they wanted to do was not that the woman should be able to get married with a fake get, but they wanted to show the guy that didn't want to give the get that we can do it without you, and sort of like to pressure him, like, we're going to use this. Somehow that would put pressure on the guy to give the get actually. They said, "Oh, we have a get," or something. Anyway, that's a little scary.
But it wasn't kosher.
It wasn't kosher. It wasn't kosher. It means you have to, usually when they come in, you ask them, what's your name? Show me identification. Does anyone here know these people? They ask, like, how do we know that you are who you say you are? So they use like a driver's license or something. Okay, let me leave it over here. Let me leave it over here. I have to run. That's scary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of these cases like that.